Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and here comes the moment that all of you have been waiting for. That is the dialogue with our Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. Well, as you know, the Prime Minister has been very busy of late, and soon after his very impactful delivery at the National Day rally, he left for China for an official visit, where he visited Beijing, Urumqi, and Shenyang, and came back only very briefly and left immediately for St. Petersburg in Russia for the G20 summit, where Singapore was one of only 6 nations, and that is non-G20, and I was invited for the particular event. So it is indeed a great honor that the Prime Minister has decided to spend time with us this evening. Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Happy 30th birthday to IE.
Right. And we hope that you have recovered sufficiently from the jet lag.
I think so.
That's good to know. Yeah, you're looking very fresh. Well, we are here tonight to celebrate IE Singapore's 30th anniversary. And for the last 30 years, IE Singapore has devoted itself to the development of Singapore's external economy. In recent years, IE Singapore's emphasis has been to nurture Singaporean and Singapore-based globally competitive companies. Yes, it's quite a mouthful. So that we can compete with the very best on world stage. How do you assess the performance, Prime Minister, of IE Singapore? And what else can IE Singapore do to help develop Singapore's economy further? And given the large contingent of captains of industry present tonight, what advice and words of encouragement do you have for them as they aspire to become globally competitive companies?
Well, I think I have to speak very carefully because it's a birthday party. And I'm not a businessman, I'm not McKinsey. So I don't have magic solutions. I think when we set up IE, we wanted to be able to give our businessmen some help, our Singapore companies particularly some help. To start off with as TDB, help with exports and developing markets. Then as IE, to develop the businesses and the investments outbound to the region and even further afield. And I think if we look at the companies which are now establishing themselves internationally, Singapore companies, I think we've made some progress. I can't say that without IE, nothing would have happened, but I would like to believe that with IE, we've made the process a little bit smoother. We've got logistics companies operating in the region. We've got commodities companies operating all over the world. We've got construction companies. We've got oil exploration servicing companies setting up floating platforms with a significant market share, one of the 3 players. So I think we're making progress getting companies globally competitive and operating on the world stage. But of course, there will be many more companies which are smaller, which are just starting out, and where you are still busy establishing yourself and a base in Singapore and trying to keep your head above water because it's a very competitive environment. And we hope to help those as well, and not just the companies which are already big enough to think and dream big to go around the world. I think if we are looking forward, so I hope that there are many small companies here as well as big ones, because we pay a lot of attention to you. If you are going overseas, we used to say go into the region, ASEAN, and then we talk about China and India. And now we have a lot of presence in the region, and I think our companies have paid school fees and learned how to operate in the region. And IE Singapore, I think between China and India, you have 12 offices in different cities, collecting information, helping out our companies to get settled in and to understand what the environment is. But if we are looking beyond the immediate future, I think we should also look beyond the more familiar region into new areas. Because the global economy is dynamic, there are new emerging economies, and you're not only talking about Asia, you're also talking about Latin America, you're talking about some parts of Africa, because Africa is a very dynamic and diverse continent. And we need to understand those places enough to know where to go in and where to try. There will be risks because that's where the returns are, but you need to know which risks you want to take. And I think I'm happy to see that IE is developing new offices. The more recent ones, they've set up in Yangon, they've set up in Istanbul, where there are a lot of opportunities in Turkey. They've set up in Johannesburg, in South Africa. They set up in Accra, which is in Ghana, in West Africa, where there's a good business environment and a stable economy. And they're already in South America. I think there's an office in Sao Paulo. So these are all possibilities which we should explore. We have to be live to the world.
Right. And Prime Minister, your assessment of the performance of IE Singapore?
Happy birthday.
Well, Chong, I hope you sleep well tonight. Well, Prime Minister, early on prior to the dinner, you had the opportunity of meeting some of the new, perhaps some of the old globally competitive companies from Singapore. What's your impression talking to those industry captains?
I think they are very diverse. They've spent some time developing their business. They know what they are doing. They're taking the next step forward and thinking ahead. And I think that's what we need for Singapore. Whether you're overseas or whether you're in Singapore, you have to be globally competitive. Because there's no way in Singapore we can build a wall and say behind this wall, well, the standards are a little bit lower. We keep the water out. Because the tide is there, the pressures are there, your markets are there. And if you are not equal to the companies which are operating in China or India or Vietnam, then you are not going to be anywhere in the world. And Singapore is not big enough for you to operate. That is a reality.
Well, that's a vote of confidence for the policy of globally competitive companies of Singapore. So, Chong, you're doing the right thing. Right. Well, Prime Minister, you just came back from China, where you met the new Chinese leadership, and notably Mr. Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang. Many China observers felt in the last 10 years, China pulled its brakes on for economic and political reform, and many consider the last 10 years to be China's lost decade. The reality is, of course, China's economy is slowing down, the wealth gap is widening, the corruption is rampant, and people are demanding change and demanding reform. What do you think do you see as the top priorities of Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang? And do you see them as capable of implementing the kind of reform that is necessary, perhaps on the scale of Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin and Zhu Rongji, which many people consider to be essential at this time?
If I'm afraid to give a mark to IE in public, I'm not going to mark any other government in public.
I try, yeah.
I think China faces many challenges. The last 10 years, indeed, many Chinese observers, their own Chinese leaders and officials feel that they wish they had been able to pursue reforms more boldly. But in fact, the last 10 years have been years of very rapid growth for China. I mean, the living conditions have improved, the society has changed, has opened up. They have made a lot of progress. Now, they have to catch up on the reforms which are still outstanding and will continue to be work in progress. And I think that's at the top of the minds of the leaders. They are discussing it intensely. They have decided to hold their third plenum, the Sanzhong Quanhui, the third plenum of the Central Committee in November. They've set the date. And that's usually where they announce major policies. And everybody is looking forward to see what they're going to say. If you read the Financial Times, you may have seen yesterday an op-ed by Li Keqiang, where he explained or really set out how resolved he was to continue to open and liberalize the economy because that's the only way forward for China. And he explained how the way to continue to have growth in China is to be able to urbanize in a comprehensive and carefully thought out way. Because by urbanizing, you're taking excess farmers off the rural areas, you're bringing them into the cities where you can provide infrastructure for them, where they can have jobs in manufacturing and services, where they can be part of the modern economy, and they can be much more productive. And you can actually have a much more productive rural sector if you had fewer workers and more consolidation, more industries. It's happening. In fact, every year, 1% of the Chinese population moves into the cities, which is about 13, 14 million people. So it's a dramatic change. They have to build infrastructure, houses, schools, hospitals, a whole lot for them. At the same time, they must be able to fit these people into the city. And they must have the correct agricultural reform so that the land tenure, ownership, transfers, the farmers can get something off their land when they go into the city. So I think these are all major economic agenda for the Chinese government. As one official said, we need to do a lot, he said to me in private. So we need to do a lot, but this is a big country. If you do something suddenly, drastically, you may destabilize the situation. So you can't do things carelessly. You have to move deliberately, but the pace has to be inexorable. And I think they understand this. And it gives me confidence when I talk to their officials, and the officials understand what is at stake, and they will support what needs to be done. Of course, it's not just economics which will be on their mind, because the society is changing too. They have now got the biggest population of internet users in the world. They are on Weibo, which is like Twitter, but more. They have other forums where they exchange views very freely, and the Chinese government tries to censor them, but is not 100% effective. And that's changing their society and creating a kind of public opinion and netizen opinion. And netizens in many countries are obstreperous and very unrestrained in their criticisms of the government, and it is so in China too. So these are changes which they're going to have to adapt to and be able to accommodate in their system within the next 10 years. And I think it's absolutely necessary for them to do that.
Right. Would it be fair to say that you don't envy their job, but you wish them well?
I'm not sure anybody volunteers for those jobs in China, but I think that is a very important job for them, and we very much hope they will succeed, because in China's success, we will derive great benefit.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Well, if I may move away from China, maybe to the US and back to Southeast Asia again, according to the minutes of the US Federal Reserve meeting that was held, I think, on the 31st of July, earlier 2 months ago, it was revealed that the US Central Bank could trim down QE3 as early as later this year and bring the whole QE3 to a halt come middle of next year. And as a result of that minutes of announcement, we saw Indian rupee hit record low, Indonesian rupiah hit all-time low in about 4 years, Malaysian ringgit slid to the 3-year low, and Thai baht was reduced to its lowest in 3 years on the back of offshore selling. Even China's capital outflow was more than its capital inflow for June and July this year. There appears to be a striking resemblance of a capital flight-induced crisis that brought down, or rather brought Thailand and South Korea to their knees in 1997-98. The Prime Minister, do you see perhaps another Asian financial crisis on the horizon? And how is Singapore going to weather the storm, if indeed a storm is coming?
Well, I think on balance, I would take a sanguine view. I think the Asian economies are in a stronger position than they were in '97 when the crisis came. I think we've got more safeguards instituted now over the last decade and a half since the Asian crisis to deal with the likely consequences of big capital flows. For example, we've got swap arrangements, we've got a Chiang Mai initiative, where countries can cooperate in order to support one another if there's a big and destabilizing flow of capital. And also, I think the Americans withdrawing the QE, or the Europeans, will be very mindful to do it carefully because they don't want to destabilize their own economy either. So on balance, I would say we are in a safe position. Individual countries will be concerned if you have some questions of confidence whether the country is going quite the right direction or not, or whether reforms are moving well or not, like in the case of India, where some investors are questioning it, then you will be quite anxious about your exchange rate and capital flows. But I don't see this being a new global crisis or regional crisis.
So in the foreseeable future, one can be cautiously optimistic, perhaps?
One is always cautious.
All right. We will leave the optimism for you to determine.
Right.
The Prime Minister has very kindly agreed to take questions from the floor, and I have just slightly utilized more than 50% of the time allocated. So with that, I will open the floor to any questions that the floor may have. And can I just ask that before the microphone gets to you, can you please stand up, identify yourself, the organization that you work for, and please get to the questions right away. Thank you very much. Can I see if I have the first question from the floor?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Jordan Schwartz, and I am the Manager of Infrastructure Policy for the World Bank, based here in Singapore. So this is a great opportunity for me. My question is a little bit self-serving as a person working in the infrastructure field. But given the dynamism of the region, hopefully we can reserve that optimism that you mentioned. We would like to know whether you could give us a sense of what the role would be of Singapore in the years ahead in financing the infrastructure of the region and beyond.
I think there's a lot of demand for infrastructure in the region. The Chinese are continuing to build. They have to build in the right places and the right sort of infrastructure, but they need a lot of it. The Indians need a lot of infrastructure. I think Indonesia also needs infrastructure. It will depend on the political climate in the country, whether it actually happens or not, and the economic policies to encourage investors to go in and build the infrastructure, but the needs are there. At the same time, the ability of governments to fund it directly, I think, is limited, because the governments will be cash constrained, they have budget limits, and banks will be also somewhat constrained, because with tighter capital requirements, it will be not so easy for them to extend as generously loans as before. And therefore, you must look for new ways of funding the infrastructure, including working with the World Bank, including bringing in funds, including structuring the packages so that you can have the venture money come in, start the project, and then the next phase, you've got a buyout fund, or they've got some other term where the next group comes in and you fund it to take it to the next stage. And we hope that in all these financial market activities, supporting real production in the region, Singapore will play a role. I think the financial institutions are here. I think the analysts who understand the region, many of them will be based here. The World Bank is here, and the World Bank has a very big infrastructure interest and program. And we hope that we will be able to play a role supporting our neighbors.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can I have the next question, please?
Good evening, Prime Minister. My name is Ulf Schneider, and I'm representing the semiconductor industry here in Singapore. My question is rather simple. Which lessons do the ASEAN countries need to learn from the problems the European Union has been facing and will be facing in the future?
Well, fortunately, we are not likely to face exactly the same problems, because we don't have a single ASEAN currency. And it is for a fundamental reason. I mean, there was a time when some European experts, or anyway prominent people, would come to ASEAN and say, Asia should think of a common currency. And I always had my doubts, because a common currency has to follow economic integration, and you must have also political compatibility. Then you can have one common currency and one monetary authority and one fiscal authority. And in Europe, you didn't go all the way. You had one currency, you had one central bank, but you had multiple fiscal authorities. Many different countries passing budgets, many different countries borrowing money, and independently capable of running into trouble. And when they run into trouble, they don't have an automatic mechanism to help one another, nor is there that political sense that we are one Europe and therefore we are in this together and it's our job to help one another. As you have in America, the United States, but you don't have a United States of Europe. So I think for ASEAN, the lesson is there's a lot of benefit in economic cooperation, in economic integration, but we must not put the cart before the horse. Let's work together, but let's do it in a way which respects the differences in our countries and also recognizes that we are 10 different countries. We are ASEAN. It's a regional association, not a union. And that makes a lot of difference.
Yes. Thank you, Prime Minister. There's a question at table number 6, I believe.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Sunny Ko, Singapore Manufacturing Federation, Chairman of Membership and Industry Function Committee. Now, I got 2 questions. One, with slowing growth in China and other emerging markets, many SME now have to explore promising but risk frontier, such as Myanmar or Africa, or enter the highly competitive developed market. Now, what pocket of assistance are available for SME to engaging this new market? Second, now ASEAN, a single economic community by 2015. It's a good market for our exporter, but there are still many barriers to trade. And would you think this vision will materialize by end 2015? Thank you.
The first part, I think IE Singapore will get in touch with you tomorrow morning. But they have 2 major programs. One is the Global Companies Partnership, which is meant for the companies which are more ready to go international. And the other one is the MRA, which is the Market Readiness Assistance, which is meant for companies which are just starting to get their feet wet and giving you basic information about different destinations, how do they operate there, what you need to know, and help you to get started. So it will have to be customized to the individual needs of the company, but there are programs to help you to do that. And IE will be focused on doing this. For ASEAN, our objective is an economic community by 2015. I think that in terms of free trade area, FTA, we already have nearly all of that because a lot of the trade between the ASEAN countries is already tariff-free. In terms of other areas, services, investments, movements of professionals, civil aviation, we have agreements, but not all of it has been implemented yet. I would guess that we will have a significant proportion complete by 2015, but there will be work which will need to continue to be done after that. But the opportunities there will be opportunities in the countries around us. It depends from country to country. Iskandar, Malaysia, I think they are very keen on attracting companies to come from Singapore. I expect that they will go the extra mile to come and promote and to give you encouragements to go there. BBK, I think is more established. The opportunities are there, but I don't know that you're going to see a radical change from what used to be before. Myanmar will be a new frontier. A lot of companies are interested, they're opening up, but it's, as you say, a risky new ground because the infrastructure and the rules are not so complete yet. But that's where you go and take risks and then try and create your own opportunities.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Do I see a hand up?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Sandana Das. I'm from R1 International, a global rubber trading company headquartered in Singapore. My question is this: with the increase in intra-ASEAN trade, can you share with us what Singapore is doing to maintain its position as a leading trade hub? Thank you.
It's a whole range of things, because trade is both a physical movement of goods, but also the financial services to go with it, also the telecoms to go with it, also the environment where the traders want to live and work. And I think we are trying to build all of that. You know what we are doing with Changi Airport. We're developing that. We're developing the PSA, building a big new port in Tuas, twice the size of what we now have in Tanjong Pagar and Pasir Panjang. And in terms of financial services, I think over the last 10, 15 years, we've probably consolidated ourselves as a major financial center, not just in Asia, but in the world. And if you're a trader, you want to be in a place where you have all these services at your fingertips. You need to fly somewhere in the world. The flights are available. You want to get in touch with somebody. You have broadband, fiber to the home. And all these are things which you can get in Singapore. We don't produce the rubber. We don't produce the tin. But there's a lot of rubber and tin which I'm sure is traded by traders in Singapore without the things ever necessarily coming here sometimes on paper.
That's right. Yes, there was a question earlier on my left. Yes, the gentleman over there. Yes, please.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Loy Pok Yen. I run a logistics company called CWT. My question is a bit closer to home. I think over the last 10 years, as we've been expanding, we've been trying to basically put Singaporeans overseas, and usually they're very reluctant, especially to move into countries, say, for example, in Africa, which is, well, you know, there's a little bit more hardship there. So the,
Especially where, sorry?
say, for example, in Africa. I mean, the only volunteers I get are basically for countries like China. So anyway, that's a nice place. So my question basically is, you know, besides grooming globally competitive companies, has the government given any thought into grooming globally competitive individuals?
Well, we have been trying very hard to give people the right education and skills to be globally competitive. The schools, the universities, the polys, the ITEs, and also the training at work. But you also want people who are prepared to go out and take a venture, dive in and be deployed into difficult places and learn what happens there, and therefore you make your way in the world. I think in terms of schools and training, we've done well in terms of getting people to go where the business is, even if the conditions are not so comfortable or comprehensive. Singaporeans don't always go as readily as we would like them to, or as the employers would like them to. There are reasons for this. Sometimes it's the children's education, sometimes it's the spouse has a career and you can't easily go. But it is a limitation for us, and if we're not able to do that, I think it constrains our potential in the world. Because if you're going to operate in an MNC and you want to reach high up in the organization or lead the MNC, you must be prepared, you must have that experience, not just of Singapore, not even just of Southeast Asia, but of being deployed to the headquarters, being deployed to another part of the world, being familiar with another continent. And then, with that background, you're ready, you're prepared, you can be a CEO of an MNC. And we need to have people who are willing to do that. Doesn't mean everybody will be able to do that, but I think we should have that spunk to go wherever the opportunities are. And some of them will be hardship postings.
Thank you for the question. Yes, gentlemen, yes.
Okay, Table 8, responding to call for national service. My name is Casey. I'm the president of Singapore Association for Private Education. I'm also the CEO of SIM Global Education. Prime Minister, earlier you talked about our schools, and they are high-quality schools. And to us, it seemed to be a missing opportunity that Singapore, we are not looking at education sector. As an economic sector, we can grow both by making Singapore an education destination, attracting lots of international students into Singapore, and exporting Singapore brand of education to other countries. We work with MTI, and they are keen to help us. But the MOE family tend not to want to look at education as an economic sector. So I'd like to hear Prime Minister's view and whether Singapore should rethink whether Singapore can really make education into a big export service earner for Singapore. Thank you.
Well, I think there's some potential, but it is not easy to do. The Australians do it, and they make a business out of it, because many of the Australian universities will go out and market to foreign students, and they charge foreign students very full fees in order to study there. I think that New Zealand does this to a considerable degree as well. In our case, we have set up our institutions, our own institutions, mainly because we want to provide for our own economic needs. They are very good institutions. We also have a proportion of foreign students in them, but we have to watch the mix of the foreign students because we want to keep this as a Singaporean institution with a Singaporean character. So we have been tracking this. It's also a sensitive political issue, and we have about 15% mix in the universities now. It may come down a little bit over time, but I think we have to have the right mix in our own institutions. Private education institutions, there have been quite a number in Singapore. I think that is an economic opportunity, but it is necessary for them to maintain high standards, and we have to be able to police them, because if it's just a free market, then from time to time you're going to have mishaps or you have some abuse, and then our reputation is dragged down and it hurts all of us. So we have got I've forgotten what the statutory board now is called. We've got a board to regulate private education in Singapore and certify them. And I think it's making some progress. But there are quite a number of, overall, there are quite a number of foreign students in Singapore. I'm not sure what the number is, but certainly tens of thousands. Universities is harder because universities, the cost is high. And for a foreign student to come here and study, that's a lot of money for them. So it's not so easy for universities to make it work.
That's right. I think we have time for one last question. The gentleman over there in the middle.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Robert Applebaum. I'm an attorney from South Africa and one of the IE Singapore honorary business representatives. My question is, I see Singaporean companies coming to Africa, and in the main, they're very risk averse. And is there any possibility of an Exim Bank or some other form of insurance that Singaporean companies can rely on when coming into Africa?
We studied the idea of an Exim Bank. Eventually, we decided that it would not be very viable, but we do have forms of support to help companies share the risks when they operate overseas. I think we set up an operation 2 years ago. I'm not sure what the latest status is. But the reason the companies are risk averse, I think a lot of it is because they're not familiar with the environment and they haven't operated there enough yet. When we went into China at first, it was the same thing. Very different environments. Even though we are ethnically Chinese and we think we know them, in fact, it's a very different environment. And it took some years before people found their feet and figured out where they could go and how to operate. And I think when you go into African countries, it will be the same.
Well, thank you. You have been a most lovely audience, and I think you would agree with me that the Prime Minister has been most gracious with his time and generous with his comments. So can I invite you to join me in showing our appreciation to the Prime Minister?